The flickering candlelight cast long, dancing shadows across the old library walls. I was alone, or so I thought, poring over a brittle, leather-bound book I'd found tucked away in a dusty corner of the attic. The house was silent, save for the groan of the old floorboards and the distant howl of the wind. That's when I saw it, a flicker of movement in my peripheral vision. I glanced up, my heart skipping a beat. A shadow, darker than the others, detached itself from the gloom and slid silently across the wall, my breath caught in my throat. I scanned the room, my eyes darting from corner to corner. Nothing, just shelves overflowing with forgotten stories, a grandfather clock standing silent sentinel, and the single armchair I occupied. The windows were latched, the heavy oak door firmly shut. There was no one else here. No one to cast such a shadow. I tried to rationalize it. A trick of the light, perhaps, the dying flame of the candle playing games with my tired mind. I'd been reading for hours, lost in tales of forgotten kings and ancient curses. My imagination was probably running wild. I turned back to my book, my fingers trembling slightly as I traced the faded script. I tried to focus on the words, to lose myself once more in the story, but the image was seared into my mind. The unnatural way it moved, so deliberate, so alive. A cold dread, slick and oily, began to seep into my bones. The silence of the house no longer felt peaceful, it felt heavy, watchful. Every creak of the house sounded like a footstep. Every gust of wind against the window pane sounded like a whisper. I told myself I was being foolish. This was a house of memories, not monsters. I closed my eyes, took a deep, steadying breath, and held it for a count of 5. When I opened them again, I forced myself to look at the wall. It was empty, the shadows were still, exactly where they should be. A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it left me feeling weak. "See," I whispered to the empty room, my voice a little shaky. "Nothing." I even managed a small, nervous laugh. It sounded jarringly loud in the oppressive quiet, but the relief was short-lived. Just as I was about to dismiss the entire event, it happened again. The shadow reappeared. This time, it didn't just move across the wall. It emerged from behind the towering bookshelf, a solid, man-shaped silhouette against the flickering orange light. It was impossibly tall, its form distorted and stretched, as if viewed through warped glass. It didn't have features, just a solid, inky blackness that seemed to absorb the light around it. It stood there for a moment, utterly still, and I felt a primal fear unlike anything I had ever known. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I was frozen, pinned to the chair by sheer terror. My mind was screaming at me to run, to scream, to do something, but my body refused to obey. I could only watch, wide-eyed, as the shadow began to move again. It didn't walk or glide. It flowed, like ink spilling across a page, detaching itself from the wall and pouring into the three-dimensional space of the room. The air grew frigid, and I could see my own breath misting in front of me. The candlelight flickered violently, threatening to plunge me into total darkness with this thing. It moved with a terrifying, silent purpose. It drifted past the grandfather clock, its form momentarily obscuring the aged wood. It flowed over the edge of a mahogany table, its darkness swallowing the polished surface. It was making its way around the room, a slow, deliberate circuit. And I realized, with a lurch of my stomach that threatened to make me sick, that it was moving towards me. It was circling me, like a predator sizing up its prey. I was trapped in its path. I wanted to close my eyes, to block it out, but I couldn't. It was a horrifying, mesmerizing spectacle. The shadow was an absence of everything of light, of warmth, of hope. As it drew nearer, a low hum filled the air, a sound that seemed to vibrate not in my ears, but deep within my chest, rattling my very soul. The smell of damp earth and something else, something metallic and vaguely sweet, filled my nostrils. The book fell from my lap, landing on the floor with a dull thud that went completely unheard over the pounding in my ears and the hum of the encroaching darkness. The shadow was now at the edge of the worn Persian rug, just a few feet from my chair. It paused again, its featureless head tilted as if it were studying me. I could feel its gaze, a palpable weight pressing down on me, cold and ancient, and utterly devoid of mercy. I tried to make a sound, a whimper, a cry for help, but my throat was constricted, my vocal cords paralyzed by fear. My world had shrunk to this single, terrifying moment, me, the flickering candle, and the impossible shadow that was hunting me in my own home. And then, it stopped. It stopped moving forward. For a heart-stopping second, I thought it might retreat, that this whole nightmare was about to end. But the cold in the room only intensified. The low hum grew louder, more insistent. The shadow didn't retreat, it simply rose. It elongated, stretching upwards towards the ceiling, its form becoming thinner, more ethereal. Then, with a speed that defied logic, it swept across the room, not on the floor, but through the air. It flew right over my head, a chilling whisper of displaced air against my skin, and settled on the wall behind me. I didn't need to see it. I could feel it, the sudden, intense drop in temperature at my back, the way the tiny hairs on my neck and arms stood on end. The oppressive weight of its presence, now closer than ever. I sat rigid, my eyes locked on the opposite wall, where the regular shadows now seemed pale and insignificant. My own shadow, cast by the candle in front of me, was stretched out on the floor. But I knew, with a certainty that was absolute and soul-shattering, that there was another shadow, a darker shadow, directly behind my chair. A shadow with no source, and it had stopped moving. It had stopped, right behind me. Thank you so much for joining me for this story. If you enjoyed it and want to hear more tales from the shadows, please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Stay safe out there, and check your shadows.